I'd like to call the meeting to order, and the first order of business is the pledge of allegiance to the flag.
Behind us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business is to elect officers to the board for 1 year. The first one is moderator. That's me. So I need a motion.
I move to elect Tom Spangenberg as moderator of the board.
Second.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. For clerk, Liz McKay.
She's there.
She does. I need a nomination for Liz.
I make a motion to nominate Liz McKay for clerk.
Second.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then I need a motion for treasurer. And last week that was from Custer, and she's going to do it again. So I need a motion.
Make a motion. Nominate John Tucker.
Any others?
Custer.
Done.
Second. We're good. I need a motion to hear and act upon the reports of the school district officers. Yes? I need a motion to approve those.
I think we were still trying to figure out who seconded the motion on the last one.
Me. Oh, I first did it. Who seconded on, Glenn did. Who seconded what?
No, I seconded Don Custer, I think.
Peter.
Peter.
He made it. You second.
Oh.
Did we take a vote?
No, not yet.
We need to do that.
Yeah, I know, we're waiting for Liz to catch up to us.
Okay.
Liz is taking notes, so.
Are we caught up? Okay, all those in favor of John Custer, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Article 2, to hear and act upon the reports of school district officers. Reports. Need a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Article 3, to approve the annual salaries for school directors and other elected officers of the school.
Yep, it was Peter and Glenn. Peter first, Glenn second. Yep, got it.
Okay. So the annual salaries for the school directors are for board members, it's $1,200. For board chair, it's $1,500. For the treasurer, it's $1,200. For the clerk, it's $1,200, and for the moderator, it's $500. Those are the same as last year, same rates. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Glenn. Second, Peter.
Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 And, zooming right along, shall the voters of the school district authorize the board of school directors borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes in excess of anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year?
So moved, Julie.
Good.
Second, Peter.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next order of business is to present the school budget proposed for this year. Julie, you're going to be doing that?
Correct.
Okay, it's a fairly long presentation. Normally, we hold questions until the end of the presentation, but Julie, is there any flexibility on that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so if something comes up, burning issue, you're free to ask the question now. The only complicated factor is on the Zoom. People who are on Zoom K2 can ask questions and they'll have to queue. Need to do that.
And in person, you gotta use the mic, so.
Yeah, so raise your hand and I'll come to you.
Okay. So, without further ado. We need a dispensation for people who don't live in the district. We need to get board approval or public approval for them to be able to speak during the meeting. This is fairly critical because those people are the ones who are going to be able to answer the tough questions. So we need
I make a motion that school officials, that whether they live in the district or not, be allowed to speak at our meetings.
Good. Second,
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Okay, so Tim Smith, board chair, is ill. Glenn is also not feeling great, so we'll, yeah. Oh, that's how we're today. All right, so we are going to go over our budget presentation. But first, before we started, I just wanted to say that we're going to be talking about a very difficult subject tonight. But we are still very proud of our schools, and I don't want to lose sight of that. We have been just we've really had a great year so far, and we're looking to finish it off wonderfully. There's lots of success stories, lots of fun stuff. I don't know if people have had a chance, but the Rutland Herald has been wonderfully generous this year with school districts and allowed us to place full-page ads for a very low price to allow all the school districts in the area to put out ads, and those have been fantastic. Thank you, Lisa, for putting those out. We have a lovely Google ad which features student voice, which is always so fun to hear instead of all the adults, right? To actually hear student voice is great. That's out there. So just know that while we're working in some really difficult education funding times, we really are proud of what we do at school. And we're really proud of our students and our teachers and our staff. So I just wanted to start it out that way because this is pretty difficult stuff. All right, so points of pride. Low class sizes, moderate class sizes, new middle school design. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to see it. If you aren't coming to school regularly, if you ever do, I'm sure if you call and you want to come see the middle school after school hours, please feel free to. Outdoor pursuits for ninth graders, 330 faculty and staff employed. It's a nice amount of people in the community. Engaged and dedicated educators, work-based learning programs. Act 77 has been an act that we've been working really hard to implement here at Slate Valley. This has been a really great opportunity to get our students into the community, working in the community members working with us, which is just as important, right? So that's something that I think we've been really proud of, and we've really worked hard to really get students opportunities. I know there are a lot of seniors that get to come for some classes and then go get some real work experiences, hopefully leading to jobs after school, a pathway for them after they graduate, so that's really been a point of pride. One-to-one Chromebooks is really important for students, really important for students and families, so we're happy to be able to do that. After school program, again, important to families. We'll talk a little bit about that here in our presentation. Off-site learning opportunities like the work-based learning. Band, chorus, and drama have really blossomed with the addition of middle school. That's been really fun to see. We've added students that have been able to take advantage of that and strengthen those programs. And numerous plus and extracurricular activities. Outside of sports, I know Fairhaven's a big sports town, but it's also nice when students have opportunities to do other things in sports. It's been really great. All right, our enrollment summary looks like the rest of Vermont's enrollment summary. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. You can see the COVID blip, and then you can see that we're kind of hanging steady, around 1,200 students. Staffing changes. You've got to be nimble when you're in education. You never know when you're going to get a bubble class or a group of small students, a group of big students, and you've got to be ready to pivot. So this year, we are reducing a speech-language pathologist and 2 technology integrationists. Adding an elementary school teacher to Benson, they've had an uptick. Middle school, high school teacher, School nurse for middle school, high school, district-wide staff technology support, different from technology integrationists, so just understand that. Custodial position, probably could use more, just saying. 2.35 positions that were previously grant funded, a school-based clinician and a 0.35 interventionist and a substance abuse counselor, which is the SAP grant. Over time, we have reduced a lot. I don't want everybody to think that we're just adding, but we have reduced overall in time. This is in response to what's happening right here and now. So it's a net addition of 4.85 positions. So our budget objectives, when we went into the budget, we were thinking of these things. 2 additional classroom teachers, you saw that. Addressing student behavior and mental health, it is a reality. It's hard to talk about. Sometimes it's even hard to understand if you're not in the schools all the time, but it is there, and they're seeing it on a daily basis, and the support is warranted. Building maintenance, $500,000 increase to address maintenance projects. We heard last year that the community would like us to build that into our budget more, so that's what we're doing. Okay, we're trying to address as we go along the best we can. That doesn't say there's not outstanding stuff, but there is a need for more money in that line item. Funding for after-school and summer programs in collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club. I think we're pretty blessed for a rural area to be able to have the Boys and Girls Club come and support our students outside of the school day. It's been a wonderful opportunity for added tutoring, more time with students outside of the classroom that we see them turn around and reflected back in our classrooms. So yes, it is a budget increase, but we have really seen the data. We've talked about the data and seen the data that has really been a benefit to our students and our families. Access to opportunity for students, the outdoor ed, the work-based learning. Efficiencies throughout the system, continuing to look for how we can do better at utilizing personnel across our district, and value for taxpayers. So these are things that impact our budget. So we're going to start getting into some of the unfunded mandates, some of the things that you have to do, some of the things that are just part of being an employer and being part of the public school system in the state of Vermont. Increased cost of health insurance, it's negotiated by the state. There it is. New child care tax, state. Addition of long-term disability and life insurance for support staff, part of negotiations. Increases in other payroll-related costs such as municipal retirement and workman's comp, things have gone up over time. It is costing more to attract and retain staff. Small example, housing. Somebody wants to move to our district. We've got a great starting pay here at Slate Valley, but they can't find housing. Right? How do we help that situation? What do we do? We can't find some specific niche positions in our district, say band or music. Foreign language has been a challenge. How do you attract and retain those people when you don't have housing? So just thinking about those things, we've had to put more time and energy and sometimes money behind it to really attract and retain staff. Act 127. I don't know if that's all I have to say, I think. ESSER, the pandemic grant funds are going away, and rightly so, right? That they were only there for a limited amount of time. We knew that. And so now is the time where they start to go away. Continued increase in percentage of students with mental health and behavioral needs. I think I've already addressed that, and you can see that in our staffing changes. Increase in poverty in our communities. We have gone up, down. We moved in the wrong direction with poverty in our communities. So, increasing building maintenance needs across the district. So again, like I said, really looking at building maintenance and knowing that we need some things to do. Yes, there's more, but we're trying to do the best we can to chip away at it. Building maintenance specific. Did renovations to the Union Middle High School, 2 classroom spaces, updating locker rooms. The girls' locker room is no longer yellow. Just thought I'd put that out there. Been yellow since what, 50, 60? Updating mechanical systems that serve the gym was part of that. If anybody's ever owned an old house, like, I get to renovate, I'm gonna rip down that wall. And then you find stuff that you didn't expect when you rip down that wall in that lovely old house. All right, and so locker rooms and middle school rooms, including the following: mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. So there's a lot of kind of in the walls, behind the scenes work happening, along with upgrading our kind of middle school space and using it more efficiently and really reducing the locker size to really be more more, equitably, they just don't use it as much as we thought they did, right? So really making those spaces more usable. Yeah,
I'd be happy to bring anybody after the meeting if they want to do a tour of those spaces, that'd be glad to bring.
Yeah. they're really nice. See, if you grew up around here and you went to the high school, it's really interesting to visualize how it now looks, I have to say. So, thank you, Chris. As we continue to work in Slate Valley to maintain buildings and grounds, we have a 5 to 10 year plan. Like I've been saying, every time I said maintenance, yes, but there's still more. Site work for stormwater management, I believe that's also a state mandate. That's come down about stormwater mitigation off of roofs. Plumbing upgrades, interior finishes, updating, heating and ventilation. Heating and ventilation really came to light too during COVID, right? A lot of talk about air exchange, and how air travels through schools and keeping kids and teachers and faculty staff safe with the air. Updates in the alarm system related to fire code changes and upgrading to building electricity to improve efficiency. I don't think anybody's gonna argue about that one either. The current estimates place the total cost of all of that at 18 million, and we added 500,000. Okay, so I'm just saying, we know there's more. We're transparent that there's more. There's going to be more talk about building maintenance. Okay, so this is the first article. So, shall the voters of the school district authorize the transfer general fund surplus balance in the amount of 500,000 to the capital improvements and repairs reserve fund? So this will be on the ballot. This obviously, as anybody knows who works with reserve funds, this allows us to have some funds if a boiler breaks or something happens within a school that needs immediate attention. So it gives us a teeny cushion to be able to do it. So that's what the reserve fund is for. And we have used all of ours. We have nothing left in ours. From doing, the middle school renovations and really trying to keep up with upgrades, we have no reserve right now. So this would be our first kind of big one to start off. All right, so here we down to the nitty-gritty of the numbers. Our expenditure budget that we're proposing is $31,021,635. Last year's $28,056,400. You can see the percentage increase change. This takes you through the formula that calculates your per pupil spending. Your expenditures minus your revenues gives you your education spending, divided by the new Act 127 long-term weighted ADM number. That puts us at an education spending of $11,384.63. Does anybody have any questions about the LTWADM? Yes. Yep.
So this is where it starts to get really complicated. The old term was equalized students. And now this comes in giving more weight to disadvantaged districts and more students. So it increases somewhat artificially the number of students in your district. Is that correct?
So I don't think I'd use those terms, Tom, artificially increase. I think it gives a true number of the amount of students in correlation with what it takes to educate them. And that's what it's all about. It's not about increasing an artificial number of students. It's about how much does it take to educate a rural, poor student in a district, or an ELL student in a district, so it depends, the weight is equivalent to what they believe the cost it is to educate that student.
And the reason for this change is?
Equity across the state, because they have seen that, okay, let's take Chittenden County. There's not rural disadvantaged students in Chittenden County. So how do you equalize or make more equal a student in Rutland County that lives in Orwell, out of the beaten path, right? Versus a student who can walk to school in Burlington. What's the difference? Why does one cost more than the other? And it's, UVM did a study, and the study's out there, that looked at all those types of students and decided it costs this much to educate this kind of student, this much to educate, and that's where the formula kind of pulled it all together.
And that's all part of Act 127.
That is Act 127, short of the monetary caps and all that have gone away, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, can you explain some of the difficulties that school districts have had with Act 127 in terms of allocations and whatever's been in the newspaper about somehow that there were a lot of unintended consequences
So
with the act?
I can do my best, and then I will look to my people who know it better than me.
Okay.
In general, there was because of the ADM, we are an advantaged district per se, because we had more students that cost more to educate than, say, Mount Mansfield. Okay? So maybe there at long-term weighted ADM went down because they didn't have as many disadvantaged students, but ours went up. Okay? So to support that transition, the state had decided before they repealed it last week that they were going to help those districts not have such of a crash. When all of a sudden their number of pupils went down and you divide it by that high number, that of course gives them a higher number, right?
Yep.
So to cushion the crash, they built in this 5% cap for your percentage increase and your 10% for your actual equalized student amount. Those have gone away, just so you know. They passed H850 last week, he signed it into law. Those no longer exist, and now there's a new support incentive of pennies on the tax rate to support that transition. So do you want me to go into like what they did to the 5 and 10%, even though it no longer exists? I'm just asking, because it no longer exists.
Why doesn't it?
Because they passed H50 because people were taking advantage of the 5%. The cap is at 5%. If you went up over 5%, you were not responsible for that in your tax rate, but the state was still responsible for the money increase. So if I wanted to all of a sudden put $18 million of building and grounds funds in there and it put my percentage increase up to 10%, I'm only responsible for 5, but the state still had to make up the rest of the money.
So the state is going to have to raise more money then to do that, yes?
That's what was happening before they did H50 and asked school districts to go back and relook at their budgets. Timing is lovely, but it is what it is.
I'm not sure I followed that last.
So the H850 that they just passed
Yes.
got rid of the 5%, no longer part of any law or anything, and asked the school districts to go back, look at their budgets, and rework them because they now will be responsible for increases minus a small percentage if they were not advantaged by the long-term weighting average. But I know we're not one of those. We didn't take advantage. So our money has not changed because we did not do that in our district.
So the total money changed?
Yeah, I think the total money will change, but we'll have to wait and see because now there could be school districts that don't vote on this on town meeting day.
Right.
So I think the total money change will happen, but it's all very much up in the air as to what it will actually be.
Are you positive we won't be affected?
No,
Okay.
I never said that. We did not take advantage of the 5% when it was there.
No, we were the beneficiary.
Correct,
Yeah.
but we will be affected because it's a statewide it's a statewide education fund, not we raise it in town education fund.
So, I'm sorry to beat it dead.
That's okay.
But this stuff is so hard to follow.
Absolutely.
And I was on the board. Thinking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm inherently suspicious of things that are that complicated, but it could be that they have to change the total dollar amount that is within that, because you can relook at your budget and say, like we do, we cut it to bare bones. There's no excess. Everybody's going to have a problem building in the state, because everything was built in the 70s. Everybody's got that same kind of problem. Everybody else has to buy into the mandates the state is requiring, health and all the other kind of stuff. So most school budgets, are fairly, you don't see excessive budgets here. You don't see people building swimming pools or field houses. It's pretty basic fundamental stuff. So I'd be a little worried about what the state is eventually going to do in terms of how much money is available for this to correct an age-old problem. Because that equalized students thing has been around for 20 years.
There is no reason to argue with you, Tom. You're right. This is all very much a waiting game right now to see what it looks like. So whether we pass our budget or not, we have no idea what's going to happen around the state with other budgets and how much money the education fund is going to ultimately need to satisfy all the budgets passed in the state.
Okay.
Yeah. So Cheryl has something to say. Wait for the microphone. Cheryl, wait for the microphone, please.
So we've always had weighted pupils. So since Act 16, we've had weighted pupils. And if the pupils were weighted differently, and those pupil weights resulted in weighted pupils that were closer to our enrollment. So it wasn't as noticeable, for lack of a better word. With Act 127, the big point of Act 127, which I think has gotten a little bit lost in the implementation of Act 127, was the point of it was to change those pupil weights. And so what you're seeing here is the result of Act 127, the change in pupil weights. And the result was that the pupil weights for Slate Valley are significantly more, which is good. That's a benefit. The controversy in Act 127 was the transition for districts who either had a small increase or had a decrease in their weighted pupils. So the big issue on Act 127 has been the transition to the weights, but the weights have been a great benefit for this district. So I just wanted to clarify, we've always had weights, but the weights are different. And the weights now are greater. The resulting weight for Slate Valley is greater. So I just wanted to make sure.
Cheryl can correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't need the microphone, but we didn't take advantage of 127 the way some schools did. And the schools that really took advantage of 127 with this new law, they're in a position of, we're in trouble. We've got to move back our voting. And they've had to move back their voting, and the new law is allowing them to do that. But we're in good shape in terms of not having taken too much advantage of that. So we're just keeping our voting on March 5th. Is that fair to say?
So it is kind of dramatic to look at the red writing with the yellow highlight down there. This is based on the most current information that we have. Nobody says it won't change tomorrow, okay? But this is the most one that we have. That the state average is expected to be $22,953 per student, okay? So think about that. We're spending $31 million with an $11,384 per student price, okay? We're half of what the average is. We all know average is 50% above and 50% below, okay? That's an average. So just keep that in mind. You know, we, like Kurt said, and I believe Tom said too, we're not just doing what we can to try to pad anything. We're educating our students for what we believe they need to be educated. And I'm hoping other schools will help bring that down by doing that as well. So any other questions about that before I move on? Yep.
Glenn Travers. The question when I read Act 850, that my name was supposed to fix it, I was a little concerned when I heard that, read the part about Governor Scott making a statement there that almost led me to believe, vote down your school budget, because that's the way to send a message to the legislature that it's a broken education funding system and it needs to be fixed. I just was wondering what your comments are.
My personal comments are that doesn't make any sense, because you're hurting our students in the immediate to have an effect for the future that's not really having an effect. Because we have to revote our budget. We still have to educate our students. We still need a new budget by July 1st. So voting our budget down does not solve that problem. The problem is definitely to get educated about our education funding system in the state of Vermont, in my opinion, and then to reach out to your legislators and your senators and your legislators, everybody, to just let them know. But I don't think anybody thinks this is a great system. It's finding the solution, I think, that's going to take time. It's finding the solution that's going to take time. And they've got to they've got to look at their systems, they've got to look at what they've got, and it's going to take time. But voting down your 2024, 2025 school budget is not going to solve it. So, do our legislatures have anything? I don't know if you guys have anything about Act 850 at all, H 850 at all about that. Yep, Lisa's coming with the thing. Yep.
Yeah, good evening. Dave Reeves, one of your state senators. I wanted to address the issue. What the governor was alluding to was that he's hoping that the school districts with the huge budget increases get voted down. Not a budget that's proposed here in State Valley, for example, but districts that really went for a money grab. That was his comment. And then I just wanted to kind of quantify statewide the education budget increase with all the warned budgets, which is proposed budgets warned out to the citizens for voting on town meeting week. The overall state budget, education budget increase was $243 million. Okay, that's an enormous increase over previous year-to-year increases. And what we're not taking into account, we also had a task force for school construction, and that bill came out to like $6.2 billion for the state, spread over 15 to 20 years. But we're talking big numbers. And the reality in the state is that this budget which is being compiled now, the next fiscal year, has got to be somewhere near flat because we don't have growth. And our expenses keep going up. So that's the quandary, that's the challenge back and forth. As we're aware, both Terry and I are in the education committee, and we hear this every day. It's not something we spend 24 hours a day on, like my esteemed colleagues, the superintendent and chief financial officer. But there's something that's got to move. We can't just keep increasing budgets year after year, expecting taxpayers to absorb. So that's the fundamental problem. That helps a lot.
I'd be in trouble with him if I didn't say something. Terry Williams from Multnomah County Senator. 18.5% is the state contribution to the increase for the education tax. That encompasses many things. One of which is that all school construction, that, for example, going to school, high school, is I think they're over $200 million. That's going to be averaged out. So your state education, colleges, your Vermont State universities, your the meal program for every student, that all weighs into this. And I think that what we've seen is that Act 60, when it was originally instituted in 1997, was an equity in education.
And it was supposed to prevent all this stuff, well, it hasn't. So Act 60, Act 68, and then when you had Act 46, when we merged the districts, that was supposed to save us money, it never has. The biggest contributor to all this is inflation. That's something that none of us have any control over. So there are a lot of contributing factors. I think from what I heard tonight, Fairhaven, your union is in good shape. And I'm from Pulteney, and I know I just barely got our town report. You know, we're almost $19,000, $16,000 per student. So, you know, when the population drops off, that affects the school and the price per student. So I wish I could tell you that I had good news for you tonight, but I don't think it's going to get any better because I asked the question of our joint fiscal office the other day, is any of this taken into consideration, the piece of beef? It has not. So, you know, we barely got, we haven't got all of the schools tested yet. So that's going to happen. It's probably going to take a major muscle movement to get a different funding system. And I'm not sure who the smart guy in the is going to take for that. Yeah. So but
Paul Stone from Orwell. It strikes me that the voters are going to see an increase in the total budget from 28 million to 31 million and say that 10% increase is too much to vote against it. And I'm impressed by the cost per pupil being half what the state is. And I commend all of the people who are involved in putting the budget together to keep it that way. I don't think there's been much education of voters as to what the board and the superintendent and other people have done to keep the budget down. And the fact that it's almost level funded on a per pupil basis from last year is, I haven't seen anything in the newspapers, as the Independent or the Rutland Herald. Maybe it's been there, but I haven't seen it. And there haven't been any mailings from the district that I'm aware of. So it's almost too late to get it out because we vote next Tuesday.
There's a mailing on its way, I believe. It'll be there before the vote.
There's a mailing that will be here before the vote. So you should get one before the vote. There's another question.
Michael Finnegan from Castleton. Here on the front. Question I have for our legislator senators. You alluded to Act 46 consolidation. Is it really time for Act 46 to grow some teeth and actually force schools that have very few students in them to start to consolidate within districts? Is it time for that to happen? Does Act 46 actually need to really?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And my personal opinion, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to pick on the Polish
Like
school.
making
I don't
the
want to
first
pick on.
stoplight out of your town, nobody wants to get it up.
I don't want to pick on the Polish school district, but there's 3 high schools. Put them all together, there's less students in this one high school. You've got 3 principals, 3 everything. That cost is huge. And one of the schools in the district graduated 12 students last year. A high school with a graduating class of 12. That's just not sustainable. And I think that's a really good place to go to try to control the cost of schools. It's not an easy thing. I mean, none of this is easy. No one wants to give up their hometown school. But it's like graduating class of 12 with all the mandates to keep a high school open is just unsustainable.
Terry and I agree. So, on the committees in the Senate, what we do is we set policy. Unfortunately, we don't always have all the fiscal data we need to do it. And I'm not gonna stand there and start pointing at school districts and tell them what to do. I know there are a lot of schools that pull back out of the Act 46 merger. Not a lot. I think there's 4 of them right now. You know, maybe when the voters take a look at it, they're going to say, yeah, we need to do something different. Maybe we'll pull it back. but that's, maybe next year. I will tell you another thing too, I think that happened was in 2018, when Beth Pierce was the treasurer, she put out a notice in first of the year that the education tax increase was going to be 13%. And everybody flipped out. And what they did that year was the year that they found some money in internet sales tax that they hadn't anticipated. They used that to pay down the taxes. I think everybody thought that was going to happen again, but didn't. Because, we don't have any extra money. The cupboard is bare and the pantry is empty.
It's been a double whammy, especially with county budgets. All the opera money's gone, federal COVID money's gone, and inflation has driven the cost of everything up. So we have a double whammy, even the county budget's gone.
Right. I didn't see it coming. I mean, most people probably did because they're so focused, but, Dave and I are just in a super minority. We don't get to make any decisions. We kind of have to go along with the ride or just say nay, and then they end up doing what they want anyway. So it's not all politics, it really isn't. But we're very limited to what we can do. But we do fight for you every day.
Thank you. So Act 46, brought up Act 46, Mike, you did too. So of course we think about that, right? Because we did it and we did it successfully. And so we do think about that and think about, okay, what did we save? Like, was it worth it for us? So if they're looking at the numbers, straight up numbers, they've looked and FY23, so not this one, but last, like FY23, our tax rate would have been 2.08 if we had not consolidated, okay? So people want to say, oh, the budget keeps going up. Why haven't we benefited from Act? We have benefited from Act 46. We did a good job following what we were supposed to do. And we had a lot of support to bring that awesome middle school here up to the high school, which has impacted drama and band and attendance. It's been great. So we have benefited from Act 46, and I just want to make that clear. All right, here we go. Education spending. So last year at this time, so we're proposing $11,384.63. It was last year $11,298.29. So it is a change of $86.34 on a $31 million budget. So yes, so not very much. Again, there's the state average, but it does show you that we have really held salt with our per pupil spending. So here we are. We're looking at comparisons in the area so that people can kind of see where we fit in all this. So you can see where we are in our per pupil spending. Okay, we're right there, almost to the bottom at this point. Corey Valley is who?
Corey Valley is Proctor, West Rutland.
Oh, okay. And Bolton. Okay, right, Corey Valley. Yep. So we are the 16th lowest in the state, right? So again, if that average this coming year is 22,000, you can see where we fall on that continuum. Okay, so this is a comparison. So if you look at equalized pupils on the top, that's the old number, the 1,285 and 6.69. It was equalized pupil. That's how we used to do it. The state took that number and put it into the new formula so we could compare apples to apples. That's how they knew if we went above the 10%, which used to be, or the 5, that they used that. So you can see that last year it would have been 2,060, and we went up to 2,355. So there is an increase in our per pupil, in our average pupils.
Our weighted
pupils, thank you. Yep, our weighted pupils. So you can tell we benefited from it. Okay, again, super preliminary. Super preliminary. The yield, which is that $9,769, actually gets set at the end of the legislative year. So every year when we do this, that is an estimate. We never have the actual number, okay? This year, we even more so don't have the actual number. So we are going with the most current number that the state has given us to give you an idea of what this could look like, okay? So you have your long-term weighted average of students divided by your property yield, gives you your estimated equalized tax rate of 1.1654. So that is the tax rate that we send to all the towns before the CLA is applied. Okay, so every single town starts off with an even playing field for the tax rate for the school district. That's the benefit of Act 46 right there. Okay, so we do not know if 9,769 is the number. If that goes down, or if that goes up, that will dramatically change the tax rate. Any questions on that? Because I know that's a little confusing.
We actually think this is the worst case.
Oh, okay.
We think the yield's gonna get better.
Okay, so that's good to know. So the experience in the room has said that they think this is the worst case scenario. Right? So that's okay. So if the yield goes up, then our tax rate goes down. Because we're dividing by a bigger number. Third grade teacher taught me that. Dividing by a bigger number, okay? So that's kind of where that stands. Yes, way over there.
I'm a very curious moderator. Why would the yield go up? Is that because of the CLA?
No, it's because the amount of money needed to raise to fill the education fund with needed money goes down. Yeah, I mean, they need less money, so they raise the yield, right? Now you have to get that microphone, or come up here, Cheryl, if you want to go back and forth.
So we think the yield could go down, could go up because of age 850, where schools are going. There are some schools that are going to go back out and relook at their budget, so that may decrease some of the required funding for schools from the ed fund. So we think that should help the yield. As well as I think they're considering all that's happened, there may be perhaps some other, they have to look at what sources there are in the ed fund. They're also talking about the ed fund reserve, because that is set at a certain level. So I think the legislature is looking at all the levers that they have available to them to affect that number.
Inverse relationship. It's an inverse relationship. The amount of money goes down that the state needs to raise, the yield goes up. If we divide by a bigger number, we have a lower tax rate.
Does this take into account CLA?
No, because it's different for each town. That comes in a later slide. All right. So the equalized tax rate, 1.16. Last year's, no. Yeah, that was last year's. Last year's was 1.17. Look at that, we went down a little, a decrease, and a decrease in the equalized tax rate of 0.59%. All right, this is all before the CLA. The CLA has not come into play yet. Just you wait. Okay. Equalized homestead tax rate. So this just shows you over time where we have gone since FY21. Okay? So our equalized tax rate, the tax rate in direct relation to our budget has gone down. Okay? Nothing to do with anything but just our budget and our students. That's what it looks like. Now, here comes the CLA, okay? So you've got two sets of CLA there so that you can understand. It's a 3-year average, right? So every year it changes. You can see the 2022 and the 2023, you can see the changes. Again, inverse relationship. CLA down, tax rate up. CLA up, tax rate down. Okay? So if you look from 22, let's just take Benson, 22 to 23, it goes down, right? So therefore, as you can see, we're going to have an increase in the tax rate. And if you look at the last year of appraisal, that's interesting in my opinion as well. Right? I think that's going to be a problem in the future too, because I think a great job, and they should have a 6-month, Stafford Tech should put a 6-month CLA training program on the ground right now. The minute you graduate from high school, by December, you can be an appraiser and you can get a job. Because there's not enough of them to do just us, let alone the rest of the state, which is in a similar situation. So that is a problem. Yes, Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
So for our state representatives here, CLA, 90% of the state is in penalty phase, yes?
I don't know the percentage.
It's 90%. Where folks undervalued under real estate because COVID, real estate prices went up, and just about everybody is in quotes, what I consider to be a penalty phase. Yes?
I don't know if it's 90%, Tom, but definitely if you're below 85%, if you fall below 85%, you would need to reappraise. So
I understand the trigger, but each and every year, that percentage. You're below 100, you're paying more. You're above 100, you're paying less. I've read this in the paper. 90% of the state, real estate is quote undervalued.
you want to save up for college, be an appraiser for 4 years, you can probably pay for it.
To me, I'm not sure I understand at this point in the game, the CLA. That allows the state to raise more revenue. If 90% of the state is quote undervalued, that means the state raises that much more money in the education fund. Am I being slow here? Or?
I think once they're reappraised, right, it changes the value of your house, which then changes like everything, every cost or benefit associated for the state of having higher value houses over time. I think you're going to have a benefit in revenue to the state. I think that's just understandable. But how it directly affects why it goes on top of our budget numbers was an equalizing measure that was appropriate, that was passed way back with Act 60. Well, I think we're in a little bit of a quandary as to whether it works or not. I don't know the answer to that. I have only dug far enough to understand like why it's there and that it has an inverse effect.
On the state level, are people questioning the property tax as a way of funding school budget? Because 65% of the state now we're 65% income sensitized already. I don't understand why you just don't do it on the basis of income. The CLA thing has driven me crazy for time out of mind.
Well, I'm not in the finance business, so I don't know, but I have heard that they're talking about statewide reappraisal. Everybody. The problem is, well, a lot of problems, we don't have enough people to do it. Unless the state does. And I think a lot of the problems we've had is when people came here during COVID, they paid twice for the value, the appraised value of the property.
Understood.
In the meantime, my recommendation is why don't we tax them on what they paid for the property, and leave the rest of us alone until we figure it out. So, and I'm a taxpayer too, but this is way above my pay grade.
Yeah, it's a quandary, no doubt. All right, so there are the numbers for the CLA. So then you can kind of see here that the CLA, it just talks about the inverse effect of the CLA, and you can see from 2015 to 2025 that the CLA has kind of meandered its way down. So this just got lower and lower, which is then affect our tax rate. All right, so if we take our 1.1654 that we propose to put forward as the education tax rate based on our budget, and then you apply the CLA, you can see what happens to the tax rate. And To Mr. Stone's point in the audience, there has not been enough education to understand what our education tax rate consists of when people see that number come across their tax bill. And that is definitely a disconnect that has happened, and it has become bigger this year because of the dramatic difference that the CLA has on our equalized tax rate that we put forward. So, not pretty, but that's where it stands right now. The only thing that would change that is if the yield goes up, our tax rate goes down, then it will feel a little better. That's the only kind of change that can happen. The CLA is set. The CLA will not change. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I just want to make one comment. Part of Act 127 is a new requirement that every community must reappraise every 6 years, which will help where we don't land in this predicament again, with towns being 12, 15 years out on an appraisal and leading to these big decreases. But as we said, I don't know who's going to do the work, but that's part of Act 127 is to try to equalize that.
And let's be honest, I mean, I'm not saying that COVID didn't affect our home prices, but we've been working on this problem since 2009, if you look up there. So yes, we want to blame the CLA, right? But the CLA has been a problem for a while. It's not this, oh my gosh, moment. All right, so estimated homestead tax rates in comparison kind of shows you where we're at, some big changes. Again, the only thing that would change it is an increase in the yield to lower our tax rate that we give you from the school district to apply to that CLA. The CLA is set. This talks about what Tom brought up, the income sensitivity in the state of Vermont. Kind of tells you by town who receives, like percentage of people who pay by that and receive an education tax credit. The difference is right there for you. The anticipated is 2.23. Last year was 2.06. Okay. Okay, here's what you will see when you go to the polls on March 5th. It is, shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $31,021,635, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. This slide shows you how we in Slate Valley receive the money that we pass as a budget to educate our students. State of Vermont from the Ed Fund, that's how much we get. $12,785,120. Non-residential taxpayers are business owners, second homeowners. We receive $8,000,009 from them. Other revenue sources, $1 million. Resident homeowner taxpayers, $5 million for the total budget does last year. Total budget of $28 million. So we are a beneficiary of the Ed Fund. Okay? We do not put in exactly what we get back. Okay? We put in less than we get back. Okay? Which is why we are a statewide Ed Fund. That's how it all works. There's other towns that put in more and get less back. And that's how it works out. And I believe that's it. So any other questions or thoughts? Right behind you, Lisa, we have one.
Nick Thornblade. I just want to comment that before I got here tonight, I was concerned in ways that I'm no longer concerned. I have confidence in the group and process that I didn't know I could have had before. I'm just so sorry that so few people here to be educated. Look at the per pupil costs, even those they are, it should express in some kind of way that you guys are doing a good job, so thank you.
Thank you.
But I don't know what we can do about everybody else not being here. They're gonna vote no just because they see numbers that they don't understand.
All right, thank you very much. And back to the moderator.
Okay, the last thing we do tonight is to transact any other business that may come before the meeting. Does anybody have any other issues?
Can we ask questions specific? Bob Crowley from Bombazine. Can we ask specific questions about the budget at this time?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So Castleton Elementary School budget, 241 students. And I've seen that it's gone up $500,000. Can somebody speak to that?
Sure, the principal of the school.
So can I ask where you're getting those numbers?
Yeah, I got it right from the budget that came off of the website of the Slate Union Valley.
Is there a
Fine.
number associated with that account? Because we don't categorize things by specific school like that. So I would have to understand. So this is Castleton. So the village, so the elementary school, yeah, you got that?
Yeah,
So that's what he's looking at.
yeah, yes, it's up $500,000. I mean, it's across our direct instructional areas, elementary education. I mean, the Castleton elementary budget is, however, it's not one specific account and not one specific area. I mean, you can see that it's a combination of all those lines. I mean, the primary increases are in the direct instructional areas in both regular education and special education. Those would be the primary areas of increase for the Castleton elementary budget. There's not one specific line that I would identify.
So I would think if you were looking at each specific school and you looked at our presentation where we had, well, $2 million increase, right? You subtract out the 500,000 for the buildings and grounds, which is across all schools, right? And you put into account the increase in teacher pay, the increase in the insurance of 16.4%. So it's spread out between all of us. So if you took out Orwell, it would probably have a similar increase because that includes all the teachers, their increases, their healthcare increases, right? So the $500,000 that you're talking about is coming from all the increases that are on. Right there. So if you take the increase of healthcare of 16.4% and just applied it to Castleton teachers, right? And the new child care tax just applied to Castleton teachers, and the additional long-term disability just applied to Castleton, right? So if you just take everything that we've added and applied it just to Castleton, you're probably gonna see $500,000 of our $2 million increase applied to Castleton Elementary School. Because each school is gonna have an increase based on their teachers and the associated cost of those teachers. Yeah, and that's all the union, right,
5%.
yeah. So it's increase in salary, increase in healthcare, increase in new child care tax, increase in long-term disability spread out between all our schools is what makes the $2 million increase that we have in the overall budget.
So is the $500,000 specific to Castleton Elementary School, or?
It's specific
is
to
that
their
specific to
teachers.
the whole-
That $500,000 that you're
to
looking
their
at,
employees?
correct. Correct. Yep.
I mean, it's never, and all these costs that increase, it depends on the makeup of the school. Teachers move on the salary schedule, teachers change benefits, teachers change, staff changes, so it's not like everything's just increases perfectly. Needs for each school may change in terms of specific needs for students in that particular school. So there's a lot of variables from one school to the other. We start with zero, and we build our budget based on the needs for each school.
Does that answer it? Yeah, I mean, I think it's basically inflation plus that.
Okay. I do have one. Right, so when the middle school combined with the high school, there was an increase of 166 students. Yet we have 4 principal positions at the high school. So you doubled the principal positions for another 166 students. Can somebody speak to that?
You want to speak to the hierarchy? Brooke's going to speak to the hierarchy of how it all works at the high school, middle school.
We always had 3 administrative positions at the high school, so we really have only added 1 to the high school. In fact, overall, district-wide, we've reduced administrative positions in the last 7 years that I've been here.
Okay.
So principal, vice principal, and special ed are your administrators at the high school, and those have always been there. Then we added a middle school principal.
Okay.
We used to have a director of guidance.
Yeah, we no longer have director of guidance.
Okay, so when I was at the Friday informational meeting, the 4+ net new positions were based on an estimate of an infusion of state money. That was the information that was given to me at the Friday grade school meeting.
Are you talking about this right here? The increase of
Right,
4.85? Yep.
Yeah. And my question was, the monies that were coming in for the state, did that have to be spent on new positions, or could it have been used to reduce the budget and possibly reduce the tax rate? Okay. So why did you feel it was necessary to create new positions instead of putting that money to reduce taxes?
So when you say state funds, are you talking like the ESSER funds, like the funds from the government of COVID? Like what state funds are you specifically talking about?
I believe she's the business
Yeah.
manager, was the
Yep.
one that just said state funds. I don't know what she's alluding to
Okay.
in the meeting.
Okay.
She just said state funds.
Okay. So just to explain this slide, just so you understand like where it came from, each one is specifically laid out, and only the bottom 2, ESSER grant and SAP grant, are 2 that were ever funded by grant money, just to be clear, okay? But the top ones, Benson Miller School was an increase in students. So if you have an increase in students, you need another teacher. You don't really have a choice, right? If all of a sudden you have 20 new students, you can't spread them out if they're all in, right? So that was one of them. Middle school, high school teacher, same thing, looking for a teacher for middle high school, school nurse for middle high school, district-wide staff technology support, and a custodial position. So those are the ones that have specific reasons for, but I think I'll let Cheryl talk about state money, because I don't understand that.
just before Cheryl does that, I do want to say over the last 7 years, net, we've reduced 25 positions in the district from 7 years ago till today. And that's Act 46. That's a direct result of Act 46.
So I think, so go to the slide that shows, the equalized tax rate. So here, yeah,
that one, okay. Well, that's like.
this is how Slate Valley is benefiting from Act 127. It's right here. We increased our budget $2.9 million, the expenditure budget. The resulting equalized tax rate is just about the same. So we were able to increase our budget, but the tax rate is just about the same. That's when you hear about Act 127 and additional taxing capacity, that's where you're seeing it for this district. As a result of the weights, increasing our budget because of the new weights with Act 127 and the benefit to Slate Valley, the equalized tax rate is nearly the same. So I think that's what you were referring to. I'm hoping that I'm addressing the question. So the tax rate, despite increasing our expenditure budget, the tax rate here is going to be just about the same. And the purpose of Act, the other point, the idea of Act 127 was for districts like Slate Valley who increase their pupil weights. We have that slide, right? We showed where we went. You know, our pupils used to be, equalized pupils used to be pretty similar to our enrollment. We didn't have a lot of weights. Holy cow, look at the amount of weights we have now. I mean, that tells you something about the makeup that we have here in Slate Valley in terms of the population that we're working with. So yeah, we have more weights, and that provides the opportunities here that we've incorporated into the budget. And that was the purpose of Act 127, for us to do that. And we did that still conservatively. The purpose is not to give it back to taxpayers. I mean, it's a slight decrease, and that does go back to tax rate. The other slide, there's another slide further down, you can see the effect of the budget on the tax rate is a slight decrease, $8. Yeah, it's that one, $8 and some odd cents. All right, there.
This one?
No, there. For $100,000 home, right?
Gotcha.
The equalized tax rate has the effect of a slight decrease. If the yield goes up, that will increase. That decrease will increase. Sorry to go on.
In terms of grants, there were schools that used the COVID money, the ESSER grant, which is the COVID money. They used that to fund a whole bunch of new positions. We were, and I say we, it was before I was on the board, but we were careful to not do that. But there was one position that we had done that with that we felt was necessary to keep. So that's one of the additions, and that was one of the ones at the bottom of that slide.
But Julie?
Yeah.
Here, I just want to clarify, and if I'm wrong, let me know, but the additional weighted money that we're getting for our students is supposed to go directly into programming to support those students. It does not, we are not allowed to use it to fix boilers or reduce tax rates for maintenance and repairs or to help, offset the increase in health insurance costs. That money that we're receiving for those students has to directly support the education of those students.
Okay, so it is mandated by the state. Then.
Is that correct?
No, it's actually not.
No, because it's taxing, because it's capacity for money, right? It's because our number of students is now went from the old one of 1,285.69 to a 2,000 or a 2,300. That increases our tax capacity, which allows us to keep our equalized pupil amount at that 11,000. I don't even know where that went anymore. The 11,000 one. Right there. It allows us to keep it there. That's why it didn't go up so much. Even though our pupils seem to almost like have doubled from 1,200 to 2,300, right? It seems like we've almost doubled our amount of pupils in our school, but it's a weight. And it allows us to keep that only going up $86.34. The point of that is to educate those students that are weighted heavier. That's the whole point of the law. So that we have more ability, more money to educate the students that need the education. That was the point of the weighting. It wasn't to give it back. It wasn't to increase the weight of a rural student and then turn around and pay the taxpayer back and still keep educating that pupil the same. The point is to put more money into the pupil, not give it back to the taxpayer.
Right, so my question is, with the money that the state is sending us has to be used for student services.
Yes.
It cannot be used
Yes,
to reduce taxes.
exactly.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes, that is exactly right. Yep.
And then the last question, okay, is, it's just pretty disturbing to me that we are now putting monies, and I don't know how much, okay, into, I don't know, for hiring therapists, counselors, what we're doing. But I know that my tax dollars go to the State Department of Mental Health. Okay, we support that, and yet I see we have to start paying for student discipline and mental health services.
You're exactly right.
Is that state mandated?
So it's not state mandated, in my opinion. What it is when that student comes and sits in a chair in front of a teacher, if we don't take care of the whole student, we can't educate them. And since the services outside of the school are not available to support that student, who's going to do it?
So we, the taxpayers of this union district, have to take on the
This-
parental
Yep.
responsibilities.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm going to give it to the special educator back here. You are right.
So I just wanted to mention that there are entitlements for services that have to be provided through the law for some groups of students. But what we are finding is that more and more students that are coming to school are coming to school with a greater level of need, as indicated in the rules that we've seen. So kids that are less prepared for entering kindergarten or not had maybe rich early childhood experiences that are coming with greater challenges and fewer sort of student readiness skills. So do we have to address those needs? Absolutely, because if we don't address those needs, they're not available for learning. Schools are the only places where students have entitlements to services. Within our state and local mental health agencies, if the rosters are full, if people don't show for 3 appointments, and they can get dropped. Seemingly they no longer have a need because they didn't show up, right? Guess what? Our kids have near perfect attendance. Okay, they're at our door every day expressing their needs. We don't have waiting lists that we can create because we don't have enough personnel to be. We're obligated because of the student entitlements to ensure that if the other agencies don't have the services to provide, that we actually have to provide them. So there are entitlements, not that.
All right, back to Tom.
Any further questions? The last thing tonight, are there any other issues that anybody would like to bring up? If not, I'd like a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.